Exposed. My spine-chilling journey as a coffin maker for a sinister, cursed employer. The moment I carved my first coffin, I didn't know the shadows it would cast over my family. A coffin maker in Maplewood sounds normal enough, right? But hear me out. The eerie whispers of curses felt like a noose tightening around my neck. The night I heard that chilling voice, a ghostly echo pleading from the darkness, everything changed. My heart raced. Chilling fear gripped my veins, and I wished I'd never opened that ledger hidden beneath the floorboards. As dusk draped Maplewood in a cloak of darkness, the town seemed to breathe with life. But something sinister lurked just beneath the surface. The funeral home where I worked, owned by the reclusive Mr. Blackwood, had become my prison. Night after night, I labored alone, laboring under the flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed like trapped flies. But those dim lights weren't the worst of it. The more funerals I handled, the less sleep I got, and the more I sensed that the town was hiding unforgiving secrets. The kids, my sweet Lily and curious Ben, used to fill our home with laughter, but as I worked these endless night shifts, their joy dwindled into wary glances at the growing shadows in our yard. Sarah's eyes mirrored my concern, the edges of her smile fraying with every anxious look out the window. "Jack, I swear something's watching us," she whispered one night, her voice shaking, sending chills crawling up my spine. I dismissed it, just a trick of the light, I thought, but deep down, dread filled my gut like a heavy stone that I'd seen it myself. The neighbors overlapping their conversations as I passed, faces pale and eyes darting. "More funerals this week," they murmured, glancing back as if I were the cause of their fear. Still, I parked myself night after night at that funeral home, too prideful to abandon my craft. Until one fateful night, I heard it, an otherworldly whisper curling around the corners of the hall like smoke. My heart hammered in my chest as I edged towards the sound. It led me to that damned ledger, a dust-covered tome filled with tales of deaths that haunted Maplewood, each ink stain a phantom. I trembled as I read of a curse tied to specific coffins, my own handcrafted designs staring back at me from the pages. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as my hands shook at the weight of what I had uncovered, the temperature dropped. I could feel eyes cold, unseen eyes locked onto me from the dark. Panic spiked as I raced back to the front of the funeral home. The shadows felt alive, creeping closer, tasting my fear. Home, that's where I needed to be. I had to protect my family from this malevolent force that seemed bent on claiming us. But as I burst through the door, my breath caught in my throat. Sarah stood rigid, her gaze fixed on the tree. "Jack," she breathed, fear edging her voice. "There's someone out there." I followed her frantic point. My blood ran cold seeing the silhouette standing among the trees, a dark figure watching, waiting. I didn't have time to think. I had to shield my family from whatever curse spiraled around us. But as I stepped towards the figure, the shadows whispered my name, and a realization hit me, like freezing water crushing down. My nightmares had only just begun. The figure remained motionless, as if carved from the very shadows that surrounded it. My instincts told me to run, to yank my family inside and lock the door tight, but my feet felt cemented to the ground. "Jack, please," Sarah whimpered, the tone of her voice making my skin prickle. The air felt thick, choked with an invisible dread. I could taste it, bitter and acrid in my mouth. The silhouette shifted slightly, and I took a stuttering step backward. It was then that I noticed the eyes, piercing and devoid of warmth, staring right through me. I could almost hear a heartbeat synchronizing with my racing pulse, a deep thrum in the silence that surrounded us. "Who are you?" I finally managed to call out, my voice wavering. The shadows flickered as if responding to my challenge. Slowly, deliberately, the figure raised an arm, pointing directly at me. My heart dropped. Everything inside me screamed to retreat, but I was rooted to the spot. "Mama!" Ben's terrified squeal echoed from the doorway, pulling my attention momentarily. My breath caught as panic stormed through me. I whipped around to see him and Lily standing too close to the open door, their tiny faces pale and alarmed. "What is happening?" Lily cried, her tiny fingers digging into her mother's side. "Get inside. Now," I shouted, more instinctively than I had ever imagined I could. The figure remained unmoved, but the air grew heavier around me, each breath more difficult than the last. It felt as if the moment stretched, twisting the seconds into a taut rope of anticipation. With shaking hands, Sarah ushered the children back into the house. I was still facing the silhouette, my resolve hardening even as dread coursed through my veins. There was something more here, something that demanded confrontation. "Why are you here? What do you want?" I yelled through gritted teeth. The figure didn't react. Instead, an icy gale suddenly rushed into our yard, knocking leaves from the trees and swirling around me like a cyclone of despair. I could feel the first tendrils of panic clawing at my resolve. Then, a voice broke through the wind, a low, guttural whisper that mingled with the rustling leaves, just barely intelligible. "The cursed, you were chosen." My breath quickened. Chosen? The ledger, the curse, it was all flowing back to me like an unwelcome tide. This figure was tied to the horrors I had unearthed, a keeper of those lingering wretched souls. Fear creeped into my heart as a wild thought crept into my mind. What if I was not alone in this curse? What if, inadvertently, I had unleashed something far worse upon my family? I took a reluctant step back, every instinct screaming at me to flee. "Stay away from my family," I shouted, that fear transformed rage, giving me strength. In that sharp moment, the darkness around the figure pulsed, a heartbeat made manifest. It was as if the shadows were feeding off my terror, but then it spoke again, louder and more commanding. "Your hands created a gateway. My children have come searching for you." Children? The words sliced through the fog of panic surrounding me, awakening an icy grip of fear unlike anything before. I thought of the coffins, the cursed creations that had begun this nightmare. Suddenly, there was a flash behind the figure. Shapes began to detach themselves from the trees, small and indistinct. I squinted in the failing light, the figures moving in with an unnatural fluidity, closing in. Shadows danced, stretching unnaturally long as they approached. Before I knew it, instinct kicked in. I screamed, "Get inside, now," and bolted toward the door, heart racing. My thoughts whirled, desperate for answers and consumed by fear. As I slammed the door behind me, the shadows thudded against the foundation with a bone-chilling resonance. I could hear them outside, whispering, scratching, their cold breath creeping through the cracks. My heart pounded as I turned to Sarah, panic mirroring on her face. "What did I unleash?" I whispered, my voice shaking. And just then, the lights flickered, plunging us into darkness. I felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing against us, and I knew the darkness was coming for something. But what were they after? What would they take from us next? The darkness was suffocating, wrapping around us like a living thing. I could barely see Sarah's face, but the outline of her shock-stricken expression sent waves of dread through me. The children were silent now, their small bodies glued to each other, sensing the impending dread. A whisper floated through the air, chilling and low. "Let us in." It was like the very walls were breathing, the house creaking with a life of its own. I reached for the lamp on the table, fumbling for the switch as if the very light could shield us from what lay outside. My hands trembled, and with a flick, the bulb buzzed to life, illuminating the dim room. But clarity did not bring comfort. Instead, the swaying shadows morphed and elongated, casting twisted shapes on the walls, the things outside taking form even in this weak light. Sarah's voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "What if we did unleash something?" I shook my head, trying to clear my muddled thoughts. The kids, their faces pale and haunted, would need me. I just had to think straight. "We need to barricade the door," I suggested, feeling somewhat steady now in my tone. We shoved the dining table against the front door, each scrape of wood against wood resonating like a deep warning bell. In that moment of frantic action, I could hear them. The whispers continued, swirling around us, sound like cold breath against my neck. "You can't hide forever, they need you." Something primal and savage screamed inside me, begging for us to escape. I turned to Sarah. "We have to find a way out, the back door, side window, anything. We need to run." "No," she cried, her eyes wide, darting nervously toward the darkened windows. "What if they follow us?" "They're outside," I countered, urgency creeping into my voice. We can't just wait for them to come in. What do they even want? What does the figure mean by children? The words fell heavy in the space between us. Suddenly, a frantic tapping sounded at the window. We all froze, bodies rigid, breaths hitched. The glass shivered as tiny knuckles rapped insistently. The shadowy figures shifted just beyond view. Shadows of children? But no, there were no children outside, just those sinister shapes. What do we do? Lily asked, her voice tremulous, barely a whisper. The tapping grew louder, echoing inside my skull. I stepped towards the window, every muscle pulling taut. We can't let them in, I stammered. But with just a fleeting glance, I saw them shadows shaped like children, bobbing and swaying just outside the glass. Their mouths moved soundlessly, words I couldn't understand, their faces eerily blank. They were calling for me. Jack! Sarah grasped my arm, fear etched on her face. How can they be outside if stop? I barked. We'll get out. We'll figure this out. Just stay close. The room felt smaller, the walls inching in on us as I turned back to the doorway. The harsh whispers seeped through the cracks, weaving into the very marrow of my bones. With careful determination, I faced the table barricade, preparing to push it aside. But just as I unfolded myself, a loud bang echoed outside, directly against the door. The entire house jolted, dust falling from the beams above. Jack, what was that? Sarah's panic peaked, the urgency palpable. I don't know. I gasped, fear curling up my spine like ice. Before I could redirect my focus, the lights flickered again and the shadowy figures pressed in closer, a dark mass pooling around the base of the door. Let us and we are waiting. The voices became a chant, surrounding us in a chorus of dread. The shadows pulsed, thickening, the darkness seeking to breach our refuge. And just when I thought I couldn't bear it any longer, a grim realization crept into my mind. A way out accepted no simple escape. Something twisted within me. I had to confront whatever I had started. The curse was entwined with my very being, and the end would not be placated until I faced it. The door thudded hard again, fraying my nerves. The very walls seemed alive, the frame straining against the pressure. The whispers transformed to shrieking, rising into a terrible crescendo, drowning out everything else. Where did you send them, Jack? That question hung in the air, urgent and taunting. Where did the coffins lead? What had I invited? The darkness was eager for an answer. My heart raced at that final thought. Realizing the shadows were no longer just seeking to enter, they were demanding a return. But what awaited me on the other side? What had I unleashed, and at what cost would it be returned? The shadows outside churned, pressing against the door like a living entity. Their whispers sharpened, filled with an insatiable hunger. We need you, let us in. Each plea slithered into my ears, burrowing under my skin, igniting panic deep in my chest. Shut up, I screamed, my voice straining against the intensity of the moment. I grabbed the nearest object, a heavy candlestick, and gripped it tightly, though my hands shook. Sarah backed away, pressing her back against the wall, her eyes darting to the window where the tapping persisted. Jack, please. What do they want? They're just kids, right? A flicker of doubt gripped me. Were they? Or had those innocent forms been swallowed by something darker? I cast a quick glance at the children, their faces ghostly pale, and felt bile rise in my throat. They aren't kids, Sarah. There's something else. Just then, the front window shattered with a deafening crash, splinters scattering across the room. The children's silhouettes surged forward, impossibly swift, pushing against the newly formed gap. I barely had time to react. Run, I shouted, pushing the table aside with every ounce of strength. It scraped loudly against the hardwood floor, echoing into the chaos outside. Where? Sarah's voice cracked again, panic flooding her tone. There has to be another way out. The back door? I pointed toward the kitchen, desperation spilling over. We bolted, dragging Lily and Owen along as the shadows writhed, climbing closer through the broken glass like a dark tide. As we rushed through the cramped corridor, an icy breeze swept past me. It felt wrong. It wasn't wind, but the breath of something alive, something that wanted us. The shadows shifted, growing bolder. I could hear them screeching now, a cacophony of rage and grief intertwining. You let us out, Jack? Now you must pay. Glancing over my shoulder, I could hardly discern the twisted forms now advancing on us. faces without features, yet their eyes black holes stared piercingly. My heart thundered, drowning out their sinister threats. We barreled into the kitchen, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead, struggling against the encroaching darkness. The back door? I yelled again, as I pushed through the swinging door, but it was locked. No. Come on. I smashed my shoulder against it, panic clawing at my throat. While behind me, I heard the unsettled whispers morph into laughter childlike, but laced with malice, seeping into the very fabric of my being. Jack! Sarah's shriek pulled me back. I turned, and there they were. The shadows slipped through the broken window like wisps of smoke, coiling around her legs. Lily and Owen stood frozen, wide-eyed and trembling that I seized Sarah's arm, yanking her away as the darkness tangled tighter. Run! Keep running! I shouted, this time dragging her towards the back wall. In a wild frenzy, I grabbed a butcher knife from the counter, diving toward the rear window where we needed to escape. A sudden crash came before I reached it, bursts of shadows pouring into the kitchen. Let her go? She belongs with us. The voices echoed ominously. They were coming. Their hollow forms swirled and advanced like a storm about to break. I sliced the blade through the air, desperation fueling my movements. With an adrenaline-fueled grunt, I thrust it into the wooden frame, splintering the glass further. Now, I yelled, turning back to find Sarah still fighting against the pair of grasping shadows, her face twisted in terror. With every ounce of strength left, I charged, throwing myself between her and the advancing figures. Let her go? She is not yours. The shadows recoiled for just an instant, but it was enough. Pushing Sarah forward, I ignited the fragile flicker of resolve within each of us. We fight, or we die? But even as we broke through, the shrieks of anguish erupted behind us, like the very walls of the house were screaming in desperation. I knew the truth crystal clear now. They weren't simply seeking to take. They needed something to return. Across the threshold, the night air hit us like a cold slap. We didn't slow to breathe. Pushing onto the porch before realizing we hadn't truly escaped. The darkness followed, almost greedy, crawling like ivy over the stepping stones ahead. We can't go back. Owen screamed, eyes darting in every direction. I felt a pull in my gut, of force dragging me toward the very location I had tried to flee. What have I done? I whispered, horrified. Jack, what is this? Sarah trembled next to me, staring at the wooden coffins stacked in the corner of the yard, the ones I thought I had locked away. And as the moonlight illuminated the scene, shadows wriggled beneath the lids, whispering in a chorus, "You've brought us back. Now the sacrifice must be made, but to whom?" As anxiety gripped my heart, a chilling realization thawed any remnants of escape. The game was far from over. What awaited us now? Would we dislodge this nightmare once and for all, or would we deepen the cycle of horrors lurking just beyond our reach? The shadows rippled, running like ink splashed on a canvas, creating an unsettling spectacle beneath the pallid moonlight. I couldn't breathe. The weight of dread hung thick in the air, pressing down on us with every tick of the clock. The coffins, once merely a source of my nightmares, now stirred with a sinister purpose. What do we do? Sarah's whisper cut through the quiet like a knife. Fear etched deep lines across her face, mirroring my own panic. We don't have time. I snapped, my heart pounding as I scanned the yard. The whispers grew louder, rising into a maddening frenzy. We need to get away from here. I grabbed her arm tightly, pulling her back toward the house, the shadows behind us writhing in anticipation. Owen and Lily stood paralyzed, eyes wide like deer caught in headlights. Come on, I shouted, my voice cracking. We can't just stand here. But my words bounced off the thickening mist of darkness coiling around the yard. And just then, something higher than our collective horror screamed back at me, echoing through the night. The fragments must be returned. You awakened us. Jack, a voice heavy with malice, crashed against the walls of my sanity. I turned, trying to decipher where it came from, but everything drew closer, inch by creeping inch. They weren't just shadows anymore. They were faces, distorted and melded into one another, angry remnants of once innocent spirits. Did you hear that? It knows my name. I felt a chill, not of cold, but of realization. Their cries morphed into desperate calls, each echo bringing forth memories I thought long buried. They want something from you, Jack, Sarah yelled, her voice barely rising above the maelstrom. What did you do? Nothing. I managed, though my mind reeled back to those nights, the dark barter that had always lingered in the back of my thoughts. I had never meant to awaken this. I swear. I didn't mean to. I was cut off by a cacophony of laughter, an echo of children now warped by something monstrous. You brought us back. You buried us, and now we demand our due. I couldn't think. The urge to flee surged through me, every instinct screaming to run like hell and never look back. We have to find a car, I shouted, desperately scanning the front yard. There's no time, Sarah cried, her grip tightening on my arm, pulling me back, yet the shadows fluttered around us, hungry and impatient. Suddenly, one of the coffins shook violently, splintering the silence as a wretched figure clambered free. Hollow eyes locked onto mine, its mouth forming a silent scream, beckoning, urging me to seek the truth that lay buried beneath lost memories. What have I done? I murmured futilely, taking a step back from the grotesque tableau. What I tried to silence was now screaming louder than ever, rising from the grave I had dug for it. No, get away from that, Sarah yelled, but her voice was drowned out by the storm of shadows swirling in anticipation of blood. Owen, take Lily and run back to the car. The words slipped from my mouth before I could stop them. Get help, please. But Jack Owen hesitated, his face twisting in confusion between loyalty and sheer terror. Go, I practically screamed, knowing every second that passed drew them closer, knowing what they wanted. Owen grabbed Lily's trembling hand, and before I could process it, they fled toward the drive. But with each step they took, the shadows leaned in, whispering sweetly, "Join us, you belong to us now." I could feel the pull like a ripped tide, dragging me down into despair. Whatever I had unleashed wouldn't relent until it got what it came for. I had to know. I had to face it, or I would never be freed. As the shadows began to circle me, their demands echoing in a relentless chorus, the truth I had tried to suppress clawed its way back into the light. You have to let us in, Jack. Just give us what we want, and we'll take you with us. And then something inside me snapped, an angry warmth ignited in my chest, rage against the inevitability of this fate. No, I will not be part of your twisted play. But as I shouted, awakening something dormant. Within the coffins, a piercing howl erupted, tearing through the night. I had awakened more than just the shadows. I was now at the center of their wicked game, and they were not done yet. What did they expect from me? And who would I have to sacrifice to break these cursed chains? The answers loomed, dark and terrible, as I stood on the precipice of my worst fears. The shadows tightened around me, enveloping my vision like a twisted cloak. I could barely make out the forms of the coffins, their lids slamming shut and flinging open as if they had minds of their own. My heart drummed in my chest, a frantic beat drowned out by the echoes of lost souls demanding retribution. What do you want from me? My voice trembled, barely a whisper. Release us. Only you can break the seal. The voices rose in a frenzy, piercing through the fear that washing over me like ice water. Each individual note sent shivers down my spine, chilling me deeper than the cold night air. With a sudden surge of courage that felt more like desperation, I staggered toward the coffins. What do you mean? I didn't mean to awaken any of you. One figure broke away from the shadows, gliding towards me, its face flickering between identities, one moment a child, the next an anguished adult. The fluid movement made my stomach churn. You opened the door, Jack. You played God, and now you must face your judgment. As it spoke, I staggered back, my pulse racing. I had buried those memories, buried that cursed pact. I tried to recall if I had signed anything, that moment flashing in my mind, a ritual crafted in desperation so long ago. What had I traded? The ground beneath me trembled as the coffin lids burst open one by one, releasing more wretched figures. The air thickened with a suffocating presence, pressing down like a weight I could not shake. Each face of anger and sorrow was a mirror reflecting my transgressions, memories I had sworn to forget, but were now clawing their way back to the surface. I turned to Sarah. We have to leave. Now. Her fear matched mine, but it was a shared, steely resolve that ignited our exchange. Jack, she breathed, panic flashing in her eyes. This isn't just about us anymore. A shadow spat forth tendrils of darkness that twisted around Sarah's ankle. she gasped, trying to pull her leg free, but the grip was relentless. Help, Jack! With every ounce of strength in my body, I lunged for her, trying to pry the shadow away. But the darkness only laughed, a low, growling sound vibrating through the air. You can't save her not without sacrifice. No, I won't let you have her. My voice was raw, a desperate plea that felt like a challenge to the encroaching phantoms. The apparitions closed in, their whispers forming a cacophony. To save her, you must relinquish your soul, Jack. Without blood, there is no redemption. Shut up, I shouted, my anger flaring. But as the shadows swirled around us, their demands echoed louder, drowning my resolve. Gritting my teeth, I looked into the heart of that undulating darkness. What do you want from me? The question was like a spark in the dark. A voice, a chilling blend of those I grieved and feared, slithered close. The one who summoned us has the power to bind us, Jack. Break your bond, or lose her. Panic surged like flames in my chest. I refused to become a pawn in this wretched game. No, I won but suddenly, the shadows lurched, twisting like hellish serpents, and I realized there was another way. With a newfound determination coursing through me, I reached for the darkness as if it were part of me. What was buried inside could be transformed. There had to be another path, one that wouldn't sacrifice Sarah or anyone else. Just as hope sparked, the shadows recoiled, howls of anger slicing through the air. You betray the pact. No, I said, fury bubbling to the surface. I'll make my own. Before I could contemplate what that really meant, a blinding light erupted from my hands. The shadows hissed, shrinking back, but as I held it against them, I realized I had just ignited a dangerous gamble. What could I unleash in doing so? I stared into the eyes of the oncoming darkness, uncertainty clawing at my heart. Would this create a pathway to salvation or plunge us deeper into chaos? And as I stood frozen, caught between shadows and light, a horrible thought struck. Would this choice unleash something far worse than the fate I feared? The blinding light pulsed and surged like the throbbing of my heart, illuminating the cold, damp ground. I could feel the heat radiating against my skin, and yet, the oppressive air wrapped around me like chains, dragging me further into despair. The shadows hissed, their writhing forms flaring shades of anger, but within the light, I felt a strange sense of power. Jack! Sarah's terrified voice broke through the chaos, laced with urgency. My eyes darted to her, locked tight in the shadow's grip. Do something. I can't hold on. Her words sent a shockwave through me. It was as if every ounce of my being ignited. I was done being a helpless pawn. I had to try. With a fierce breath, I concentrated deeper, channeling every memory, every regret, my voice merging with the force building inside me. I command you. The light expanded, swallowing the darkness around us, twisting it, repurposing it. Shadows faltered, retreating from the brightness like insects scuttling away from sunlight. Fool! The loudest wail roared from the shadows, a visceral, throaty sound that sent tremors through the very ground. You think you can wield us? You are but flesh. You will pay dearly for your defiance. Stop! I cried, my voice a razor cutting through the tension. I am not afraid of you. As I spoke, flashes of dark figures sprang up around me, twisting in agony, desperate for release. Faces of those I tragically knew, others I did not, all swirling in their sorrow. The movement was dizzying, and yet I was tethered to my determination. Release our pain, Jack. You owe it. They chanted, drawing eerily close, eyes wide and pleading. Stop it, I shouted, pushing down the knot of anguish threatening to choke me. A flicker of doubt clawed at the edges of my mind. I fought back the memories of my past that rushed to engulf me. This wasn't about reliving my guilt. I needed to focus. I squeezed my eyes shut and envisioned the bond one could break, a thread woven through the darkness, connecting Sarah's struggle to the spiraling shadows around us. If I could snap it, perhaps we both could escape this hell. In that moment, I felt a pull at my core. The blinding light flickered, wavering like a candle in a storm. A scream of fury erupted, shaking the very air. Let her go? I roared, stretching my arm towards Sarah. She looked at me, hope dancing in her eyes, which fed my resolve. With that spark, I gathered all of the light from within and gave it form, a radiant sphere binding together every ounce of my regret and rage. The shadows recoiled, screeching in agony, their dark tendrils twisting backward as if I'd hurt them. You think you can destroy what lies within? You are merely igniting our fury. Try me, I howled, the words surging from my throat like a vow, a promise to unravel the darkness. But in my ferocity, I could feel the world around us quaking, the ground rumbling beneath us, cracking as shadowy fissures yawned open. Jack, Sarah shouted again, her face pale. What if this backfires? I hesitated, the sheer weight of my choice crashing down. What if I unleashed a nightmare worse than the one before me? What if this gamble consumed us both? But the shadows lunged again, a wave crashing, desperate to reclaim their grip. I had to choose. Would I give in to their demands, surrender myself completely, or embrace the light and risk everything? In that split second, the room flickered between darkness and blinding luminescence. Dread gripped my heart. I had to decide, and as I opened my mouth to speak, the world shattered around me in a blinding flash of pain and terror. What awaited us in the remnants of that fractured abyss? Would the brink of my decision cast us deeper into darkness? Or could I forge a path to liberation? I braced myself for the uncertainty, heart racing, waiting for the reckoning to unfold. The light exploded, and for a moment, I was lost in a sea of white. It enveloped me, filled my lungs, surged through my veins. Then silence. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I noticed was the smell decayed and wet, like fresh earth on a grave. I lay on the ground, no longer grasped by shadows, but not fully free either. I blinked against the dimness, taking in my surroundings. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating, thick with an unseen presence that clung to my skin like sweat. Jack! Sarah's voice echoed from somewhere behind me, distant, trembling. I turned, heart pounding, searching for her in the curling darkness. Sarah! I pushed myself up, but my body weighed down as if I emerged from a deep swim. There was no light now, only shadows draped in a sinister embrace. They hung thick like fog, hiding what lay beyond. Where are you? I shouted, panic clawing at my throat. I'm here, she called back, her plea piercing the haze. I can't see anything. Jack! I stumbled toward her voice, each step feeling like wading through molasses. Each shadow I passed seemed to breathe, to absorb my fear. I felt their eyes upon me, watching, waiting, reveling in my agitation. Then I caught a glimmer of faint outline in the darkness. My heart surged as I lunged toward it. Sarah! My fingers brushed against something warm, her arm. Relief flooded through me. I'm here. I found you. We need to get out of here, she said urgently, gripping my hand tightly. It felt strange, like fire and ice touching together. I looked around, desperate for a way out, but all I saw were the grotesque shapes of shadows whispering among themselves. The whispers grew louder, words spiraling in eerie harmony, forming an indistinct chant. They swirled around us, echoing with threat. Your heartbeat quickens, they sung, voices slithering like serpents. It tastes so sweet. Shut up, I yelled, gritting my teeth, trying to focus on us, on escaping. I yanked Sarah toward a darker patch of gloom, hoping we could evade whatever awaited us in those voices. The shadows seemed to sulk back, but the moment felt fleeting. Anger rose within me. I won't let you take her. You want my power? Here. I pulled the rage from the depths of my chest, pushing it outward like a shockwave. The shadows hissed, recoiling from my force. I could feel them burning around us, crumbling at the edges. But they wouldn't give up easily. You cannot escape the inevitable, they uttered in unison, their tones shifting from sweet to menacing. You are our plaything, Jack. Nothing more. The ground began to tremble, a deep growl vibrating beneath our feet. We need to keep moving, Sarah urged, pulling me along, her grip unyielding. Together we dashed through the darkness, the chants rising in a frantic crescendo, each step resonating with the rhythm of my heart, each beat like a warning bell. Suddenly, an intense light burst from the shadows ahead. I squinted, barely able to adjust, and saw a silhouette. A figure stood at the edge of the light, a tall, menacing form draped in black, with eyes that glimmered ominously. The air thickened with fear, pulling at my lungs. What are you? I gasped, dread setting my skin aflame. Your worst nightmare manifested, the figure hissed, stepping closer. It wasn't human. Something unnatural shimmered beneath its surface, twisting and reshaping itself like molten metal. You've invoked powers beyond your understanding, boy. A chill ran down my spine. This was it. This was the reckoning. Jack! Sarah screamed, her voice cutting through my realization. We can't stay here. But the creature lunged forward, a dark wave that seemed to swallow the light whole. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I turned to bolt, dragging Sarah behind me. The shadows roared with rage, their whispers morphing into howls. You cannot run forever, Jack, they screeched, each sound a nail clawing deeper into my psyche as the darkness closed in around us. I remembered the vow I made. I had to confront whatever lay ahead. The path forward, dim but present, beckoned. But would we emerge on the other side or fall forever into the depths of despair? Sarah, hold on, I shouted, fear twisting into determination. We ran, into the light, into the unknown, where every breath felt like a countdown. And as the darkness crashed upon us, a chilling thought seized my mind. What if the true horror awaited us at the end of the road? I pounded down the darkened path, Sarah's hand a lifeline in the chaos. The creature's presence loomed behind us, slipping through the shadows like smoke. My heart thumped, racing against dread, pushing me forward. Every corner of this nightmarish place felt alive, pulsating with a malicious energy that clung to my skin. Jack, we need to find somewhere safe. Sarah gasped, her voice quivering in the oppressive air. Safe? I shot back, my breath ragged. We're safe in a place like this. A hollow laughter echoed around us, the shadows twisting into grotesque forms. Safe? There is no such thing, they taunted, their voices melding into a chorus that chilled my bones. Then, a crack in the darkness appeared, a door, slightly ajar, with a faint glow radiating from inside. It flickered like a beacon of hope. Without hesitation, Sarah tugged me toward it, and we dove through the opening. The door slammed shut behind us with a resounding boom. Muffling the cacophony of wails, we collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. The room was dimly lit, shadows still lurking in the corners, but offering a reprieve from the chaos outside. A sense of fragile safety enveloped us. Are we safe? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. I think so. I panted, glancing around the cramped room. It was filled with odd trinkets and shelves of dust-covered books, the kind that beckoned secrets long buried. I stood shakily, urgency replacing the brief calm. We can't let them find us, I muttered, scanning the narrow confines. My eyes landed on a large, weathered book lying open on a small table at the center, the pages fluttering as if stirred by an unseen wind. It caught my attention. There was something undeniably magnetic about it. I approached it slowly, my fingertips brushing against the brittle pages. Strange symbols danced across the yellowing parchment, esoteric and foreboding. Jack, leave it, Sarah urged, fear oozing from her voice. We can't be here. We have to keep moving. But I was entranced. My pulse raced as whispered words began to seep into my mind, their meanings so tantalizingly close yet frustratingly out of reach. I flipped another page and felt a disturbance, an unexpected blast of cold air swept through the room. And then came the whispers, clearer now. Unlock the door, free as they slithered. Set them free, I searched the room for the source, but it was the book's call that gripped me. A compulsion surged through me, a desperate longing to understand what it promised. I think it holds the answers, I breathed, barely aware that Sarah had stepped back, her face pale. Jack, no? You don't know what you're doing, she protested, her voice rising in panic. Before I could respond, shadows pooled in the corners of the room, dark fingers stretching toward us. Join us, Jack, they hissed. We've been waiting for you. The chill of their words wrapped around me like chains. My stomach twisted, and I felt the temperature drop. We need to go now, I yelled, tearing my gaze from the book and grabbing Sarah's arm. But the shadows began to spill into the room, advancing with sinister grace, desperate hunger glimmering in their dark forms. They twisted and writhed, their whispers blending into a terrifying symphony of temptation and threat. Open your eyes, Jack. You can wield the power now. My voice broke like glass, and I forced myself to turn away from their seduction. We have to fight. Together, we sprinted for the door, just as the shadows lunged, snapping at our heels, hungry to drag us back into their dreadful embrace. I threw myself against the door, slamming it shut just in time as black tendrils reached out to grasp us. But the door didn't close completely. A narrow gap remained, darkness spilling through, wrapping our feet in its chilling embrace. The whispers grew frantic now, desperate cries that tinged the air with insanity. "Jack! They're coming!" Sarah screamed. As we stumbled back, I glanced over my shoulder. The room shook, walls cracking with insistent pulses. "We can't hold them off forever," I shouted, fear propelling us. But a flash of realization sparked in my mind. The book, I needed it. Whatever dark power it contained might be our only salvation. "Sarah, I have to get it." "What?" "No, there's no time." But desperation clawed at my mind. Maybe it was our only chance. I lunged back toward the table, risking the shadows that now clawed at my ankles, dragging at me with their spectral hands. In that moment, I understood. The true horror wasn't just what lay outside that door, but what I was drawn to within. Would it save us, or would it seal our fate? The shadows screamed, and I flinched at their enthusiasm. My heart raced, but I clenched my jaw, steeling myself. As I reached for the book, a fresh wave of shadows erupted through the door, a dark tide of malevolence. Would I pay the ultimate price for knowledge, or would it destroy us all? The moment my fingers touched the fragile spine of that book, a surge of power shot through me. The shadows hissed, recoiling slightly, as if aware of the storm brewing within these pages. For an instant, doubt flooded my thoughts. Was this the answer to freeing Sarah, or the final nail in our collective coffin? Ignoring the whispers urging me to join them, I flipped the pages with trembling hands. Each symbol pulsated with dark energy, unraveling the mysteries etched within. "Jack, come on!" Sarah's voice was nearly frantic now, her eyes darting to the shadows creeping closer. I could feel the weight of their hunger in the air, a suffocating pressure pushing against my resolve. I needed to push further. "Listen, it says that to break the seal, I must willingly embrace the darkness." I spoke as I read, my voice mingling with the wind swirling around us. The words felt foreign yet instinctively familiar. There must be something we can do, something I can do to send them back, to set everything right. But as I read deeper, the shadows surged forth, clawing at my ankles, their whispers morphing into maddened shrieks. "Join us, Jack! You can wield the power!" they screamed, their chorus reverberating in my chest. "Jack!" Sarah cried, grabbing my arm, pulling me back from the precipice of temptation. "You can't. Please, we have to go." "No, this is our chance." I shot back, desperation bubbling inside me. Could I wield this darkness to undo the curse that had chained us? With my heart pounding against my rib cage, I steeled myself and pushed deeper into the lore woven across the pages. Then, a passage leapt off the page, illuminating my mind with a blinding certainty. Only when the heart is laid bare in the presence of darkness can the true sacrifice be made. Instinctively, I understood. If I wanted to free Sarah and the children, it would require more than mere words. I would have to face my innermost fears, confront my past, and relinquish a piece of my very soul. "Jack, don't!" Sarah pleaded, her expression filled with raw terror. But it was too late. I felt the power coiling within me, the shadows whispering promises of freedom mixed with dark temptation. That I inhaled sharply, locking my gaze on the approaching tide of darkness. "I will not be your pawn anymore," I declared, my voice now steady. "I could unleash you, but I control my fate." Drawing on every ounce of determination, I stepped forward, fully ready to embrace the agony that was to come. That a scream erupted from the depths of the shadows, deep and echoing, as if I had struck a nerve. "You'll pay for your defiance." They howled, but I stood firm. The air crackled, tension hanging thick as I prepared for the sacrifice. "Release them," I bellowed, a raw power igniting around me. Brightness flared in my palms, radiating like a beacon as I split through the shadows converging on us. They writhed as bolts of light pierced the darkness, illuminating twisted faces that twisted with rage and confusion. "Jack!" Sarah screamed, her eyes wide, yet I could see the flicker of hope igniting within her. I took a deep breath, my heart hammering, and prepared for the unimaginable. In an instant, the shadows recoiled, but I felt the darkness clinging to my limbs, a desperate plea drawing me further into their embrace. I knew I must sacrifice something that anchored me here. I do this for my family. I roared, tearing through the dim light. The energy surged in response to my fury, a violent whirlwind forming into solid tendrils of light. The ground shuddered beneath me as spectral forms began to rise from the shadows, lost souls tangled in horrific chains, bound by the curse I had unwittingly awakened. My heart sank, realizing the weight of what I was faced with. "Join us!" They cried out one last time before a brilliant explosion erupted from my outstretched hands, flinging darkness away as if cast by the strongest wind. No, this time, it was me who screamed, the pain sharp and raw as light erupted, filling every crevice of my spirit. The shadows writhed and shrieked, stretching toward the light, but it was driving them back into the depths from where they came. And just as the darkness seemed to recoil, I cast my will into the light, feeling every moment a lifetime of guilt, desire, and fear coalesce within each wave, unleashing a flood of clarity. "Let them go," I cried with every fiber of my being. "I refuse the darkness. I release you." Waves surged through the expanse, shadows swirling and colliding, and with that command, the figures trapped within the coffins burst forth, their faces shifting from sorrow to relief. Before my eyes, the children emerged from the shadows, Owen and Lily sprinting to Sarah, joy and relief filling their faces. They blinked wide-eyed, not fully understanding the fate we had altered. The darkness around me began to dissolve, specters retreating into a swirling abyss, shadows disintegrating as the bright light sealed them away. In the fray, Sarah's hand found mine. Her grip tightened, warmth seeping between us, grounding me amidst this chaos. "Jack," she murmured, and just like that, we were pulled back into the warmth of each other, the shadows finally fleeing into nothingness. But as the silence fell, I felt the weight of chains lift. The coffins, those warped tortures of my soul, lay dormant, their power surrendered. Though the fear remained, I knew we were free. We could go home. As dawn broke across the horizon, sunlight flooded the yard, illuminating the remnants of our nightmarish ordeal. I pulled Sarah close and looked at our children alive, their laughter echoing against the etched scars of memory. Tomorrow would see a fresh start, one where old horrors did not rule our lives. "Let us go home," I whispered, finally at peace knowing I chose to embrace my fate rather than let the shadows define it. My heart swelled as I led my family forward, each step lighter and freer from the burdens that haunted us. And as we left the shadows behind, I knew one thing with certainty: love would always be worth the fight. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.